The mid-size sedan segment is definitely defined by restrained styling. That's what we see going on in this Jaguar XF, just like we see that in the Audi A6 and the BMW 5 Series. Personally, I find the Cadillac CTS and the brand new 2017 Mercedes-Benz E-Class to be the most attractive entries because they're going after something that's a little bit more visually exciting than we see right here. A complaint about the previous generation XF was that it was a little small for this segment on the inside, especially in the rear seat area. And that has been solved for this generation of the XF because they've stretched the car overall and they've stretched its wheelbase, which gives us a little bit more room between the rows of seats. At 195 inches long, that also makes the XF one of the longest entries in this particular segment. And that's very noticeable, especially now in the back seat and in the trunk, where we get some of the largest accommodations in this group. The rear end of the XF especially is different from the other Jaguars out there, although this does borrow some of this tail lamp theme from the Jaguar F-Type, especially this little swoosh running right here through the tail lamp modules, although the overall design is definitely different than the F-Type. It's also quite different than the Jaguar XJ, which has that very vertical theme going on. In the United States, there is just one engine under the hood of the XF. It is a 3-liter supercharged V6 engine, although it does come in 2 different power levels. The one we're testing right here is the 340 horsepower version. There's also a 380 horsepower version. Like the BMW and the Mercedes, the Jaguar is rear-wheel drive by default, but you can add all-wheel drive to it as well. The front seat comfort is very comparable to the base seats that you'll find in the Cadillac CTS as well as the BMW 5 Series. However, BMW's up-level sport seats are more adjustable and therefore a little bit more comfortable than I found these particular seats. Our model has 4-way adjustable lumbar support, but we do not have an adjustable thigh cushion. I did find the seat bottom cushion to be a little bit short for my taste. As I said, one of the major changes for the 2016 XF is right back here in the rear seat, where we definitely have more room than we had in the last generation XF. Sitting right here behind myself, I have about 3.5 to 4 inches of legroom left, and my hair is definitely not touching the ceiling. One of the major areas of change for the 2016 XF is right back here in the trunk because it has grown to enormous proportions. This is now about 30% larger than the average trunk in this segment. You can see I have a 26-inch roller bag and a 24-inch roller bag right back here, and they are quite far back in there, actually completely under the glass in the trunk area. You can actually put a 24-inch roller bag right here in front and then one completely behind in this cargo area. And that's including the fact that we actually have a compact spare tire right here under the load floor, along with a little bit of additional storage. The overall design inside and outside of the XF is very modern and very clean. So we see that going on right here on the front doors especially. It's a very flat design right here, although there are a variety of different materials. We have the optional carbon fiber trim in our model. The modern theme continues on the dashboard, where again we see that carbon fiber strip running right there along the top of the dashboard, very much like we see in the larger Jaguar XJ. Jaguar makes a Meridian audio system standard on the XF, and there are 2 different Meridian systems. One is optional and one is standard. They both have speakers right here on the dashboard at a slight angle, which is kind of a nice twist. You'll also notice that the dashboard is also all stitched material. So right over here, it may look like an injection molded dashboard to the casual observer, but this is a stitched piece, and that's why we see that separate little door there for the airbag on the passenger side. Below the 2 air vents right there, we find the infotainment and navigation system. Now there are 2 different systems available in the XF. This is the base system, and then there is an up-level in-command Pro system, which uses a considerably larger screen that occupies basically this whole bevel, and it's a touch-screen interface very much like a tablet computer. Below that infotainment screen, we do find the controls for the either dual-zone or 4-zone climate control system. Ours does have the 4-zone system, so you actually use a combination of this screen and these controls in order to control the rear climate. A full LCD instrument cluster is available in the XF, but our model does not have it. Therefore, we have a speedometer on the left side and a tachometer on the right that are traditional gauges. In between that, we have a full-color LCD multifunction display. The steering wheel is an attractive 3-spoke design with a circular airbag in the middle. You'll find shift paddles on the back, down on the left, up on the right, and of course sport grips right up top. The biggest difference between the XF and the competition out on the road really is the handling ability of the XF. And I'm not just talking about grip, although that is definitely higher than some of the competition. I'm really talking about the engagement, the sense of refinement, and the overall feel of this vehicle. It's very obvious out on the road that the A6 is heavy up front. It's definitely reluctant to turn in when you're really pushing that car hard, but the same thing can actually be said of the BMW 5 Series and the Mercedes-Benz E-Class, not because of the weight up front, but just because of the way those suspensions were tuned. The Jaguar XF, however, feels very much like the Lexus GS. To some, that may sound like a knock on the Jaguar, but it's really not, because the Lexus IS and the Lexus GS have some of the best sorted rear-wheel drive chassis in this particular segment. I'm not talking about pure grip, however. I'm talking about refinement, precision in the steering, The vehicles go exactly where you want them to go, and they definitely have a strong rear wheel bias. The difference is that the Lexus doesn't have the thrust that the competition has, and therefore the Lexus GS will always be slower around a track. However, the Jaguar XF combines that handling feel that we get in the Lexus GS with the handling ability that we see in the rest of the competition, and then it has a sense of urgency that we just don't see in the competition. The XF, on the other hand, is an interesting combination of things because we get very similar feel to the Lexus GS, but we get a sense of urgency that we just don't see in the rest of the competition thanks to this supercharged engine under the hood. This also ran from 0 to 60 faster than a wide variety of the competitors in 5.3 seconds, keeping in mind we are in the 340 horsepower version. That's about 1/10 of a second faster than the Audi A6 3.0T or the BMW 535i that we last tested, and it's nearly a full second faster than the naturally aspirated engines we see in the Lexus, the Cadillac, or even the Mercedes. Of course, if you want to go faster than that, Jaguar has that 380 horsepower version, which is a little bit unique because the rest of the competition generally jumps right from this about 330 horsepower to over 400 horsepower, and Jaguar has that 380 horsepower engine there. Now, if you opt for the all-wheel drive XF, which is what we're testing right here, Jaguar has programmed this all-wheel drive system to send more power to the rear than we see in the majority of the competition. The all-wheel drive version of the BMW 5 Series and of course the Quattro versions of the Audi A6 do send the majority of their power to the rear, but they don't seem to be sending quite as much as the Jaguar does. This definitely is more tail happy out here on these winding mountain roads, even though this is the all-wheel drive version. Thanks to the wide tires that are on our R Sport model, we ran from 60 to 0 in 123 feet, which is also among the shorter entries in this segment. You can thank the wide tires and the low curb weight in the XF. The XF manages to have just about the same kind of curb weight that we see in the Lexus GS, even though this is a supercharged V6 under the hood, not a naturally aspirated engine, and of course it is larger than the Lexus GS. The firm suspension tune that we see in this R Sport trim definitely pays dividends when it comes to the handling, but it does spoil the ride just a little bit. And personally, I would prefer my Jaguars to be a little bit more plush than this. Although this cabin is a little bit louder than the competition at 50 miles an hour, the engine noise is a little bit more pleasing than the turbocharged vehicles we see in this segment. Turbochargers, of course, interrupt the exhaust flow and interfere with the sound, which is why we see BMWs out there with canned exhaust notes that are played digitally through the speaker system, and that's not going on in the Jaguar XF. The reason, of course, is because we have a supercharger under the hood and that doesn't interfere with the exhaust stream. The downside to the urgency, the acceleration, and the exhaust note that we get with a supercharged engine, of course, is fuel economy, and we've been averaging just about 18.9 miles per gallon over 350 miles of mixed driving. That is notably lower than many of the competitors in this particular segment, especially those turbocharged competitors. Jaguar's solution to the fuel economy problem, of course, will be answered very soon by their new turbocharged 4-cylinder engines, which we should be seeing in the XF within a year or so. When it comes to pricing, the important thing to keep in mind with the XF is that this does come with only one engine at this time in the United States, and it is that 3-liter supercharged V6. Basically, all of the competition start with 2-liter 4-cylinder engines, and the Audi A6 actually starts as a front-wheel drive vehicle, and then you migrate on to Quattro all-wheel drive with their larger engines. The $51,900 starting price on the XF may look like one of the more expensive entries in the segment unless you take that into account. Once you do take that into account, however, the Jaguar is one of the least expensive. In fact, only the Lexus GS 350 is less expensive than this for a 6-cylinder entry in this segment. Although the Lexus does use a 6-cylinder engine, it is neither turbocharged nor supercharged, and that means it's not going to have the same kind of performance that we find right over here in the Jaguar. If you want the 380 horsepower trim of the XF, that will set you back $62,700, and a fully loaded XF at this moment comes in right around $80,000. Again, keep in mind that Jaguar does plan to offer a less powerful 4-cylinder engine in the future, as well as more powerful V8 engines in the future, so you should expect that price range to broaden over time. If my money were on the line, it would be a very tough decision between this Jaguar and the BMW 5 Series. Both vehicles are obviously restrained in their overall styling, and the Jaguar does accelerate and handle better than the BMW 5 Series. However, I really appreciate the technology going on in the 5 Series a little bit more than what we see over here in this Jaguar XF. Now again, I haven't tested Jaguar's latest infotainment and navigation system, and that may flip the balance in the Jaguar's favor. However, at this time, the overall functionality of iDrive, the way that it works, the way that it interacts with the driver, and the rest of BMW's active safety systems and active driving aids in the 5 Series tip the balance in the BMW's favor. Even though the BMW is a little bit more expensive and a little bit slower and it doesn't handle quite as well, I would actually buy the BMW over the Jaguar XF. So again, my bottom line is the BMW 535 Xi over the XF, unless, of course, you're after sharper handling, slightly better 0 to 60 performance, or you're looking at that 380 horsepower version of this, then I'd take the Jaguar over the BMW. Thanks for watching. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2016 Jaguar XF. Be sure and click those related videos down there across the bottom of your screen. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes with thetruthaboutcars.com, and this has been the 2016 Jaguar XF. Be sure and hit that subscribe button down there at the bottom of your screen, and I'll see you next week.